Life felt stretched thin then. I was deep in my college years, graduation loomed on the horizon, a strange mix of excitement and uncertainty filled most days. I was also in the Marine Reserve at the time. That added another layer to everything. The world felt big. My own future seemed like an unwritten page. I wondered where I would land. What path would I finally choose to walk? Around this same time, my father made a significant change. He decided to retire from his long career. He packed up his life. He chose to move south. New Orleans became his destination. The city wasn't entirely new to him. He had history there. It was a place that called to him for reasons I understood. His two sons from his first marriage, my half-brothers, still lived in Louisiana. New Orleans held many memories for my father. He had spent formative years there. His 20s and 30s unfolded on its vibrant streets. He knew its rhythms. He understood its unique culture. Returning felt like closing a circle in a way. It was a homecoming of sorts, decades later. He spoke of the city with a fond nostalgia. He looked forward to its familiar embrace. I think he craved its warmth and soul. His move meant a shift for all of us. I was happy for him. He deserved a peaceful retirement. He deserved to be near more of his family. I knew I would visit. New Orleans was a captivating place after all. It would be a chance to connect more with my half-brothers. Little did I know how this move would set the stage. It was the beginning of a truly bizarre chapter for our family. A chapter involving a man named Tom. My father found a truly wonderful place to live. It was an apartment complex unlike any I had seen. The buildings were arranged around a central courtyard. A sparkling swimming pool sat right in the middle. It was the heart of the place. Palm trees and lush plants grew everywhere. The air always seemed to hum with a quiet energy. It felt like a small, hidden oasis in the city. It was a cool place, he often said. The complex attracted a certain kind of resident. Many were around my father's age. They were retired or semi-retired. They were sociable people. They enjoyed the easygoing atmosphere. My father quickly found his footing there. He made friends easily. He was always good with people. He seemed to blossom in this new environment. He often told me about the gatherings by the pool. He spoke of card games and potluck dinners. He mentioned long afternoons spent chatting with neighbors. A real sense of community thrived there. People looked out for one another. They shared stories, they shared laughter. It sounded idyllic in many ways. My father sounded happier than he had in years. He had found a new rhythm. He had found a new tribe. Among this friendly group, one individual soon became a regular fixture in my father's stories. He was a retired Army general, my father told me. This man lived in the same complex. He was a contemporary. He shared certain life experiences with my dad. Their friendship quickly took root. This man's presence would soon become deeply intertwined with our lives. His influence would be profound and deeply unsettling. The general's name, my father eventually told me, was Tom. Or at least, that's what we would all come to call him, Mr. Tom. He and my father struck up an immediate friendship. They were the same age, which provided common ground. More significantly, both were Korean War veterans. This shared history forged a powerful bond between them. They understood things about each other that few others could. They had seen a different world. My father had served in the Marines. He did his 4 years during the latter part of that brutal war. Tom, on the other hand, had made the Army his career. He had stayed in. He had steadily risen through the ranks. His military resume, as he presented it, was nothing short of remarkable. He had apparently attended Ranger School. He had gone through the demanding Special Forces pipeline. These were credentials that inspired awe and respect. Tom, we learned, was considered a country expert for Korea. He had spent a significant portion of the Cold War stationed there. His duties were varied and important. He trained Republic of Korea Marines. He was involved in gaming out complex World War III scenarios. He also worked closely with a large private corporation. This work, he hinted, involved semi-spook activities. He spoke of it with a quiet authority that left no room for doubt. His retirement story was equally impressive. He said he retired as a full colonel. Just before leaving the service, he was promoted to brigadier general. This one-star rank was a gesture, he explained. It was to sweeten his pension. It was an old boy club courtesy, a nod to his long service. This detail, like so many others, added to the intricate tapestry of his life. A life that seemed larger than most. A life we readily accepted as truth. Tom's story didn't end with his supposed Army retirement. Far from it. The tragic events of September 11, 2001, apparently changed his trajectory once more. According to Tom, the government came calling. They needed experienced leaders. They needed men who understood complex systems and high-stakes environments. The nation was scrambling. The Federal Air Marshal Service was undergoing a massive expansion. They needed someone to lead the restructuring. Tom, with his distinguished career and recent separation from active duty, was presented as the perfect candidate. He explained that they sought someone without a direct parent command. His year or so of retirement made him ideal. He wouldn't have conflicting loyalties. He could focus solely on the urgent task at hand. To ensure he had the necessary clout, the story went, he was promoted again. This time, he was elevated to Major General, a 2-star. This rank would give him the authority to deal with other generals. It would place him on equal footing with high-ranking GS-15 civilian employees. He would also be interacting with powerful private sector executives. This promotion, Tom claimed, was no small affair. He told us Colin Powell himself had pinned on his second star. The ceremony, he said, took place at the White House. It was a detail delivered with casual modesty, but the weight of it was clear. It painted a picture of a man operating at the highest echelons of national security. He was back in the thick of things. He was serving his country once more. He was answering a call that few could. It was an impressive narrative, one that deepened our respect. At this particular time, my own life was at a crossroads. I was still in the Marine Reserve. College graduation was just around the corner. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were ramping up. I hadn't yet been called to active duty for Operation Iraqi Freedom or Enduring Freedom, so I was actively looking for my first proper grown-up job. The future felt uncertain. I was considering various options. Little did I know Tom's grand story would soon intersect with my own job search, presenting a seemingly incredible opportunity. During my visits to New Orleans to see my father, I met Tom many times. He was a constant, pleasant presence around the apartment complex. He became one of the kindest men I thought I knew. We would often find ourselves sitting around the pool. The Louisiana sun would beat down. I, a young enlisted Marine, would pick his brain endlessly. I was fascinated by his claimed military experience. I wanted to hear about the spooky adventures he was, as he put it, at liberty to talk about. He always had a story at the ready. It's hard to adequately describe the feeling for a young Marine. Being so close with a supposed two-star general was surreal. In my military experience, I had seen a general perhaps 3 times. Each sighting was a distant, formal affair. If you're a lance corporal in a rifle platoon and a major shows up in the barracks, it's an event. You snap to attention. You bark out attention on deck. Like it was Darth Vader himself walking into the room. The air crackles with a sudden, intense formality. Somebody with stars on their collar might just give you a heart attack on the spot. The rank difference is immense. So, to be casually shooting the shit with Tom by the pool was pretty special for me. He never made me feel like a subordinate. He spoke to me as an equal, or at least with a paternal warmth. He listened to my own fledgling military stories. He offered what seemed like sage advice. He treated me with a respect that felt extraordinary, given our supposed differences in rank and experience. These interactions solidified my admiration for him. He wasn't just my father's friend, he became a figure I looked up to. He embodied a kind of quiet heroism I aspired to. He seemed to carry the weight of his experiences with grace and humility. He was approachable, yet he exuded an undeniable authority. The stories he shared, the wisdom he imparted, it all felt incredibly genuine. I hung on his every word, completely unaware of the elaborate fiction he was weaving around us all. Tom presented himself as a widower. He was the quintessential old Southern gentleman. He always had a polite word, a charming anecdote. He dated women here and there, though nothing ever seemed too serious. Though he didn't smoke himself, he always carried a Zippo lighter. It was for lighting a lady's cigarette, he'd say with a slight smile. One sunny afternoon by the pool, he lit a cigarette for me. I noticed his Zippo. It had a Ranger crest embossed on it, a small, telling detail. When I asked about the lighter, he explained its significance. His daughter, he said, had given it to him years before. He admitted he thought it was a bit gaudy at the time. He wasn't the type to advertise his status or accomplishments, but, he continued, he came to cherish it deeply after his daughter died. She had been an avid equestrian, he told us. Her life was tragically cut short in a car accident in Costa Rica. This happened in the 1970s or early 80s. She had been down there for some kind of prestigious riding event. His wife, he added, died of cancer some years after that. Tom's apartment, my father mentioned, was covered in photographs of his daughter. Pictures of her in riding gear, frozen in time. She was beautiful, he'd say. The dated feel of these portraits, the quietness of his apartment, and Tom's outward sanguinity in the face of such loss. It all painted a horribly tragic yet noble picture. It made him seem even more stoic and admirable. He carried his grief with a quiet dignity that was incredibly moving to witness, or so we believed. At any rate, when my father suggested I explore the Air Marshal program, Tom and I spoke on the phone. He couldn't answer many of my specific questions, citing operational security, but we talked for about an hour. In the end, another job opportunity came through for me, so I didn't pursue the Air Marshal path. Still, my dad would give me regular updates on Tom. Once, Tom told my father that their simulations showed terrorists' groins stayed relatively still during an aisle rush. They decided to aim there. My physician father, ever curious, designed a hemostatic jockstrap. Tom later said a pharma company was making a prototype. My dad just wanted to help. After the Iraq invasion, Tom supposedly left the Air Marshals to work for Condoleezza Rice. Tom was more than just my father's friend. He became a cherished figure to our whole family. His kindness seemed to have no limits. He possessed a gentle warmth that drew people in. He always had time for a conversation. He listened intently. He made you feel like you were the only person in the room. This quality was rare. It was something we all noticed. It made him incredibly special to us. My half-brother's children particularly adored him. They lived in those classic New Orleans neighborhoods. Houses were close together. Everyone always seemed to be out on their porches. They visited with each other often, especially in the warm summer evenings. Tom would sometimes swing by their houses. He'd just appear, a friendly smile on his face. The moment he was spotted, chaos would erupt. My niece and nephew, along with all the neighborhood kids, would come running. They would flood the street, a chorus of excited voices. Mr. Tom is here!" they'd yell. It was a scene straight out of a heartwarming movie. He had a way with children. He treated them with respect and genuine interest. He'd listen to their stories. He'd ask them about their day. He sometimes took my brother's kids to Saints games. Those were treasured outings. He was to them a magical figure, a beloved presence in their young lives. All in all, everyone truly loved Tom. He and my dad had become incredibly good friends in just a few short years. Their bond was strong and visible. They shared stories. They shared laughter. They shared a quiet understanding that only veterans can. Tom wasn't just a neighbor. He was family. He wove himself into the fabric of our lives. He did it with such grace and sincerity. We never questioned his place among us. My personal admiration for Tom grew with every visit. Those afternoons by the pool in New Orleans were formative for me. I was still a young Marine trying to figure out my place in the world. Tom, with his supposed decades of high-level experience, seemed to have all the answers. He spoke of leadership challenges, discussed geopolitical complexities, and shared anecdotes from his alleged time in special operations. His stories were captivating. He never talked down to me. He addressed me as a fellow serviceman, albeit a much younger one. He listened to my own experiences in the reserves and offered advice that felt profound. He had a way of making complex military concepts understandable. He spoke of duty, honor, and country. These weren't just words to him. They seemed to be the very principles he lived by. I soaked it all in. I felt privileged to receive his counsel. Being in his presence felt significant. I remember thinking how lucky I was. Here was a two-star general, a man who supposedly advised presidents, taking the time to mentor me, a young lance corporal. It was almost unbelievable. This wasn't the distant, imposing figure of a general I knew from formal military settings. This was Tom. He was approachable, kind, and wise. My respect for him deepened into a profound admiration. He seemed to embody the ideal military leader. He was strong yet compassionate, intelligent yet humble. He carried an air of quiet authority. It wasn't just his alleged rank or accomplishments that impressed me. It was his character, the way he treated people, and the genuine interest he showed in my life and my aspirations. These interactions were more than just casual chats. They were shaping my understanding of leadership and fueling my own ambitions. Life took a sharp, painful turn in 2004. I was mobilized for deployment to Iraq. My world shifted. Preparations were intense, emotions ran high. Then, just before I was due to leave, my father passed away. The news struck me like a physical blow. Everything felt unreal. I was granted emergency leave and flew to New Orleans in a daze. My family gathered, united in our sorrow. We decided to scatter his ashes in the Gulf, at Grand Isle, Louisiana, a place he loved. Tom was there with us, a steadfast presence. He wore his full-dress uniform. The crisp lines and shining metals seemed to underscore the solemnity of the occasion. He stood tall and dignified as we made our way to the water's edge. My brothers, their wives, my sister, my girlfriend, and I shared that painful journey. The Gulf breeze was gentle, the waves whispered against the shore. We said our goodbyes and released my father's ashes into the vast expanse of the water. After the ashes were in the water, Tom did something I'll never forget. He removed his pristine white gloves. With a deliberate, respectful motion, he threw them into the Gulf as well. They followed the path of the ashes. I hadn't known this tradition before. It was a powerful, poignant gesture. He choked back tears. His voice was thick with emotion when he spoke of my father. He shared a few heartfelt words about their friendship. His grief was palpable. It felt as deep as our own. Later that evening, Tom's kindness continued. He took my sister and me to an expensive dinner, one of the finest restaurants in New Orleans. He wanted to comfort us, to show his support. He told us he was always there for us. Anything we needed, anytime, he said. His sincerity seemed absolute. In that moment of profound loss, his presence was a source of strength. His actions at my father's farewell cemented his place in my heart. He wasn't just a friend, he was a true brother in arms to my dad, and a guardian to us. After my deployment and eventual return home, life settled into a new, different rhythm. I admit, I fell out of touch with Tom during this period. The demands of readjusting to civilian life, coupled with the geographic distance, meant our paths diverged. The memories of his kindness, however, remained vivid. He was still Mr. Tom, the heroic figure, in my mind. Then, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. The news reports were terrifying. Images of the city underwater filled the television screens. A deep sense of dread settled over me. I thought of my family. I thought of all the people my father had known. My immediate concern was for my brother and his wife Maggie and their children. I managed to get a call through to Maggie after several anxious attempts. The lines were overwhelmed. Communication was sporadic at best. When I finally heard her voice, a wave of relief washed over me. She confirmed they were safe, though their own neighborhood was completely flooded. They had evacuated to a friend's house. This friend lived on higher ground, spared from the worst of the rising waters.